So my husband and I were both working there, so we'd hand the child over in the car park. He did night shift and I did days or evenings, and we got through it. And then I finished that, and that was at a tiny private psychiatric hospital called Mount St Margaret's. As soon as I finished, I went back to Concord Hospital and worked in mental health then. Then had second daughter in 1988.
Wow.
Wow.
What was it that led you to become interested in dementia?
Some of that was that I was living the experience of my grandfather at the time. Because my grandparents, I skipped that. When I married, we actually bought a house with my grandparents as well. So we had 2 flats, and the deal, well, the understanding was that as they aged, we would, care for them, but it wasn't really a spoken understanding. And so my grandfather, around the time my first daughter was about 2, started to show signs, and it progressed. And I could see what being in a family environment and more nurturing helped him. And I just got interested in that part of the world.
And how did this lead you to eventually becoming involved in the Montefiore home?
Okay. In about 1991, after I also did my gerontology training, because I thought I always wanted to do that, and I always wanted to move into true gerontology. So I did my gerontology training about 1990 to 91, and then I was lucky, I think, to become the nursing unit manager of a newly opening ward at Concord Hospital, which was a behaviourally disturbed and dementia unit, really, but for people that were acutely sick in the hospital. And I opened that, and I was there for about 7 years. And at that time, I'll say, Dr. Agnes Gaynor, was one of the doctors there. And over time, there were different Jewish people that did come into that ward. And I learned a little bit more. But at the time also, my husband was really, he might have been a psychiatric nurse, but he was also an amateur historian. So he was very interested in Jewish history, and he was bringing home more information. So then towards the end of 97, a position was advertised at Montefiore. I applied and I went there. And within a few months, I was the nursing unit manager of the dementia unit there, the special care unit.
And that is a place that is very close to my heart, because my mum is there, and you certainly laid a very good foundation for the care there, because we are just very, very happy with the unit and with the care that she receives. So at that time, you and your husband had thought about a path to becoming Jewish?
Yeah, we talked about it over that time when I was working at Montefiore, because I turned into the question person of the rabbi at the time, who was a pretty radical rabbi at the time. He's no longer there, but he would answer questions and give me logical answers to why things were happening, because over the time I'd ended up by default in the acting position of Director of Care of Montefiore at Hunters Hill. So I wanted to understand why these people were doing what they were doing, and how I could further establish things.
And so you were at the Monty at special care for how long?
A couple of years at special care, and then ended up deputy. I was director for a short time, and then I went into the deputy position.
Right, and your husband became ill.
Yeah, over time he became ill. I left Monty in about 2001 because I felt like I needed to get more experience in residential aged care, and I felt that I was in a protected environment in Monty, which I was. A beautiful environment, but so I went out and got some more experience. And over that time, I was in contact with a couple of people from Montefiore, and my husband became unwell, and he died in 2006. And so, just before he died, I'd got a call from Monty asking me to come back, or come in, we want to talk to you about positions at the New Randwick. And I'd been involved in the New Randwick when the land was bought. And we were the first architect's appointments. So at that point, I had an interview, I accepted the job, and over a weekend, I realised I couldn't start a job with a husband so sick. Mm-hmm. So I withdrew the application, and it progressed. He passed away in the October, and February, Monty rang me back and said, we've heard what's happened, we're really sorry, but are you ready? So I thought, I don't know if it was madness or what, I took the challenge and went to Monty.
Just before you went back, you were working at the James Milson Nursing Home.
Yes.
And you had quite an exciting day one Christmas.
Yeah, just after Christmas, New Year, I was involved in an armed robbery where I was held at sharpened screwdriver point. It was pretty awful. And that was one of the turning points that I thought, I need to get out of this place. I've had too many bad memories here, so it's time to move on.
Was anybody else injured in that attack?
No one was injured, thank God. But the guys did go to another. They killed someone about 2 weeks later in Leichhardt, a restaurant person that broke it. They'd gone in the same sort of scenario, and he chased them, and they killed one. And so they've been they were charged and went to prison. So
good. Well, I hope they're still there.
Yeah, I do too.
Goodness me, what an experience. So you went back to the Monty, and what that was when you finally decided that it was time to become Jewish.
Kind of. So I got back there, and it was quite a weird experience. I remember walking through on a Friday evening when a Shabbat service was happening, and I felt like I was home. I could hear stuff, I could feel it. So then I started staying back on a Friday and helping with Kiddush and doing things with the rabbi, and I was very comfortable. And my daughters came, like we went to the Seders when I was there, and it just felt comfortable. It felt like I was home. So I wasn't sure about it. So I thinking, what is going on? And it was new. It's like I was newly widowed. I thought, don't make any rash decisions now. And then it was a very hard time at Monty because it was the commissioning of the whole facility. So after a couple of years, I thought I need to go and have a bit of an easier life. So I left Monty again and went and worked with United Care with mental health and homelessness geriatrics. So that was a change. But when I left is when I thought there's something missing. And I woke up and I didn't know, it was the Yom Kippur, and I made the decision that I was going to investigate converting. So there you are.
So what was the next step in the conversion process?
I went
kind of walk us through what that journey was.
First I met with Rabbi Roger because I formed like a connection with him over the time, met with him. He kind of wasn't surprised, could understand. he gave me what I had to do next was, make an appointment with the Beth Din, apply. So you put in an application, you put in a bit of your story. So I did that, and then you get an appointment. So your first appointment with the Beth Din is quite frightening for someone that's coming to them. And that appointment was, why do you want to do this? And so I had to talk to it. And I was sent away with, you need to read this book and do this stuff and ring us back and make another appointment in, I think it was 6 weeks. And I didn't know, but usually people are sent away and told not to come back for months. So I read the book, lapped it up, went back, and at that appointment they assigned me a teacher, which, so I have assigned a teacher who was Judith Ingram, and from then on I think I met with her once a week for probably 18 months and learnt. So learnt Hebrew text as much as I could and everything.
And were you required right from the beginning then to start keeping kosher?
Yes. Well, yes. Keep kosher, go to shul. Rabbi Roget, because I was living at Bondi then, I actually sold my family home and moved. Rabbi Roget told me where he thought I'd fit into shul the most comfortably, which was Nefesh. So I went there and I became part of that community really quickly.
And then the actual conversion process, so that was now a total of about 2 years?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had an appointment I got to a point where they said, it's time to go back to the Beth Din, check in, and so I had to go armed with letters from Rabbi Moss, and the teacher had to put in letters to formally go through the last part. So then I met with the Beth Din, I got approved, a bit traumatic, but lots of questions, and that was okay. And then I think it was within a few days I went to the mikveh. So, and then a year later I was given my certificate.
A year later? Why that length of time?
I don't know. I don't know why the Beth Din did that, but they did. So there was no risk of me having babies or anything. So it was an incredible experience.
And then you met Daryl after that?
Yeah, about a year after that, after I'd been in the mikveh, through a friend that set us up to meet, and we met, and the story has gone on.
the rest is history, as they say, and so now you are because of his family connection with the Greats, you are now a well-loved member of the Great. You got married at the Great?
Yes, I did.
About 5 years ago.
Yeah, 5 years ago.
Yeah, yes. Now, you have, your 2 daughters have given you some lovely grandchildren?
Yes. So I have, Rochelle has Lachlan, who's 10 now, and Olive, who is 6, and that daughter became a jeweler, so she's a jeweler, and she's just set up her own business now because she's had quite a few years of a very sick child who's finally starting to get through this. And my other daughter, Bronwyn, has Lyra, who's 6, and she had another son called Gabriel who passed away at 10 months.
And you have, Daryl also has children, and you have grandchildren on his side too.
So 2 more, Ari and Remy.
Absolutely wonderful.
And one on the way.
And one on the way in Israel. That's right. So you then became a counsellor at Lifeline.
Yeah, a crisis phone answerer, whatever you want to call us. I did that about 3 years ago. I trained to be a counsellor on Lifeline, and I go about once a week. In this lockdown time, I haven't. Up till yesterday, I did my first shift back, and it was lovely, in a strange way. Strange. And I also still do some consulting work as a aged care consultant, but a very small amount. And I've just trained to be an end-of-life doula.
Tell us about that, Simone. I'm very interested in that.
Nursing, I've always been involved in people at the end of life and always been very comfortable in that space. And working in residential aged care, you do a lot of that, being with family. And I've always been someone that would be with family. So I felt comfortable with it. And it was my daughter that had lost the baby said, do you know there's an end-of-life doula? And I think that'd suit you. So I investigated, I did the course late last year, and I'm in the process of setting up the business. But with all this that's happened, I haven't been able to.
I'm really interested. What does an end-of-life doula do? I know what a childbirth doula does, and you prepare the mum and then you're with her during the actual birth. How does this translate to end-of-life doula?
End-of-life doula is someone that supports and goes through the process with someone. So if someone's diagnosed with cancer, and they might ring an end-of-life doula to support them and support and remind them to do the things that they should be doing if they want to, like an advanced care directive, make sure that their affairs are in place, and just support them, and maybe even go to doctor's appointments with them if that's what they want. It's just to have someone separate from the family, but to just walk with them in the path of what's going to happen and support the families too.
And was this be in conjunction with hospice care?
Yes. So it can be in conjunction with hospice care that people go into the hospice, but a lot of people are choosing to die at home. So it's in that end-of-life space at home too. So the only person that might be there is the doula, and the family. And it's trying to get the families to connect and spend time in that space and not waste it, really, if that's what they want to do.
I think it's absolutely wonderful that families don't feel that they have to face this traumatic event alone, and they have support of someone like you. That's wonderful. Simone, your life story is just amazing. I think Agnes wants to say something.
So am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. Go right ahead, Agnes.
Yeah. So as Simone mentioned, we came across each other in the 90s. And even now, just hearing Simone, you talking, I didn't realize just how inexperienced you were when we worked together in the psychogeriatric unit. Just for everybody's benefit, I mean, for those of you who do know Simone, I mean, she's got an amazing gentleness and an amazing calmness about her. And I don't think she's given you any idea of the challenges that she faced in our psychogeriatric unit. This psychogeriatric unit was the first of its type that was set up, because normally it takes basically people with disturbed behavior on the background of dementia usually. But as we were starting up, our guidelines weren't as clear as they certainly became, and we took much younger people who just nobody else would take. And these are people who had a propensity to violence. Simone and I was certainly drawn to Simone because I was a young consultant, and she had the psychiatric experience and I had the medical experience. And there were two consultants, and I fortunately had a very experienced senior colleague. But the two of us were the only geriatricians in that ward, which Simone ran. And I don't know, Simone, if you want to even mention any any of the cases that come to mind that were particularly challenging? You may, I don't know if you recall the younger gentleman, were you still there, the 51-year-old who came from Prince Alfred?
That used to climb the fences that we had to progressively get higher.
You could mention, you know, I can't even remember if it was Owen, but anyway, whichever, if you want to mention anything about challenges or anything. But just to share, I mean, Simone and I had 2 children each. And so, you know, I was certainly drawn to Simone, and, you know, you need a chance to be able to talk about other things other than discussing patients and patient management. And we used to chat. And I then met Simone again at Montefiore when she was in special care. I don't think I was consulting there at the time, but I think I was visiting, and I'm going, oh, hi, Simone, what are you doing here? I hadn't realized that's where she had gone after she left us. And intermittently we bumped into each other, and I think I met you after, the next time was after you had converted, just after you had married, before we actually joined the synagogue here. But anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure, I can tell you, having worked with Simone, and I think I learned a lot from her, and just her calmness was so pervading when my heart would be going boom boom.
Simone, if you wouldn't mind sharing any interesting cases, as Agnes has suggested, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, the ward was only 15 beds. I think we opened as 9 beds originally, and we spent a couple of weeks training the registered nurses. It was all registered nurses. We were primary nursing, which is an old-fashioned now, but it was that you looked after the same patient every day you worked, and you managed their care. So we went into it all very naive, and the first few patients that came in were extremely aggressive, not wanting care, not understanding. And I do remember that we put up a lovely little pool fence at the beginning because we had an outside area so people could get outside. Put up a tiny, like a normal 5-foot pool fence. Well, that got scaled in the first week. So it ended up being a really big fence because we were chasing people all over the hospital. So we got very fit. So we did that. And it was for their care. It was for safety. We had people that would take all their clothes off in the middle of the day. The night staff at one point said at 2 in the morning, when everyone was up rampaging, as they called it, and we weren't medicating people. That was our other thing, that we were trying to do this without medication. So we were trying to be innovative, and I think we succeeded mostly. And the night staff, because they could see we were trying to do things differently, were leaving if everyone was up at 2 in the morning, what was the point of trying to chase everyone back to bed? So they'd get up and they'd make them a cup of tea, turn the lights on, and be done with it. And it actually worked because you weren't being confronting with them. It was tiring. There was a scene, I remember some visiting doctors coming to do a hospital round from, I think it was China. And we had someone, because we had medical interventions going on, so we had someone having a blood transfusion. And when we last 2 minutes before seen him, he was okay. We walked down the ward and he pulled out the transfusion and was using it as a lasso. And that was very, it was like, how do we get these Chinese doctors back out without too much embarrassment? But we got there. And we had successes there. We had people that would come in heavily sedated from nursing homes and other places and take them off medication, and they did get better.
Yeah, that is a real issue in the care of patients with dementia, is this balance of medication, and that's what the government commissions are looking at, is how heavily medicated the patients are. and trying to get them off medications so they're not all sedated. So it's a very fine line that you're treading.
Simone, I don't know if you agree with this, but certainly one of the things with the questions, a couple of people or comments that people made about support, and I can certainly say the way that the geriatric model that we worked under and geriatrics does is and how Montefiore works is multidisciplinary. So you get input. It's the nurses get the brunt of everything. They're at the cold front. They're there for their full 8-hour plus shifts, and all the other team members are in and out. But certainly it's a sharing role. And I used to find that the nurses were the ones who taught me, who supported me. When there were traumatic events and difficulties, the only time that something might have happened was when things went really wrong, like you might have even got a complaint right from the government, right up what we called a ministerial. And then suddenly there'd be all this support if, you know, a complaint had gone right up to the ministry that because of a particularly violent patient, and then we had to empty the ward of the more frail people or whatever. And because it was very hard to place these people out of the hospital, I mean, I think we had one person for nearly 12 months, if I recall. So, and he was 51 and he was incredibly hard to place. But an indication of our success was that this chap actually didn't need residential care afterwards, and he actually went more to hostel care. So the care that the nurses provided, the incredibly calming atmosphere, the non-confrontative way they approached it, really is all behavioral. And that within the residential care sector is very difficult if you don't have the number of nurses. Because some of these people almost need one-to-one care until you get them settled and trusting, and it's amazing what can be done. But in the interim, the support for the nurses, I think they support themselves until something like EAP came along. And I went to them when, you know, you got to stages where you're tearing your hair out and you're feeling that there isn't the support and people don't understand what's going on. Today, and I think I only found out about EAP in the 2000s. I don't think it was really well publicized what was available, certainly not to doctors. I think maybe the nursing staff knew about it before we doctors did, and it wasn't seen as the right thing to do because, you know, that's a weakness you're showing. But certainly I used psychological support as well. You know, if you're not going to break under it, you do need support at various times. And certainly the doctors support each other as well. Concord is one of the places where, I don't know, certainly the term bullying is sometimes used in a professional, and you may read horrible things about hospital hierarchies, both medical, nursing, but there are places where that is not the situation and staff support each other across the board. And I think Montefiore is also an amazing place. I saw changes there from when I was there as a young consultant before Simone went to Monte. I was a visiting doctor at Montefiore from 87 to 90 as the area geriatrician. And I saw wonderful changes occurring after the 90s as I was visiting there. And the patients that Simone is referring to is the difficult patients from Montefiore came down to Concord. So we did see them. So that's where also the initial contacts came. But Simone, you know, I love you.
Thank you.
I've always been drawn to you, and we've reconnected since we've met each other at Monte, and it's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I have noticed in many of the comments that we've had here this morning is how many people have said, gosh, Simone, you know, I knew you, but I didn't know that much about you and what you had done. And that was the whole aim of Great Women when we launched this program of these sessions, was to get to know each other better. As Caroline Lewis put it, she said, when we go back to shul eventually one day, we'll all be friends, meeting each other again. We'll know each other just a little better. And I certainly think that today is a prime example of that. Simone, you are an amazing person. You have the most giant Jewish heart that we can imagine. We're just also thrilled to know you. I'm proud to have you as a friend. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. It's been absolutely wonderful.